All information. January 21, 2019. Fascist Fourth Reich collapsing as roundup of war criminals continues. Posted on benjaminfulford.net. By Benjamin Fulford. The removal of Führer George Bush Sr. has exposed a new layer of mass-murdering fascists in the US and Japan to arrest or sudden death as the war against the satanic Hazarian mafia rages on. In Japan, fascist Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and his regime are headed for war crimes tribunals. As a start, French police have charged Tsunekazu Takeda, head of the Japan Olympic Committee, with corruption. This is only the beginning of his legal troubles. Takeda is the son of Prince Tsuneyoshi Takeda, a cousin of Emperor Hirohito who was responsible for setting up the notorious germ warfare Unit 731, according to U.S. military police sources in Japan. The Abe regime has also been caught trying to set up their own bioweapons lab disguised as a veterinarian college, the sources say. Also, the projected costs of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics have tripled to over $30 billion to pay bribes to gangsters and politicians, the sources say. One of the main ways this money is being laundered is by having government officials tell gangsters where Olympic venues will be built so they can buy up the land and sell it to the government at a huge markup, Japanese gangster sources say. The money thus generated is divided between the corrupt politicians and the gangsters. Other money goes to Olympic security, or payments to gangsters for guard services, the sources say. This is to replace the funds they have been embezzling from the so-called Fukushima cleanup. Any journalist who actually goes to Fukushima with their own Geiger counter is forced to admit there is very little radiation. The money allocated for the cleanup is put into dumpsters and transported back to Tokyo for bribes, the sources say. Abe and his group need to go to jail or hell ASAP. In the US, meanwhile, it turns out that Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller is the son of Gestapo Chief Heinrich Mueller, according to CIA sources. While the crimes of the father are not the crimes of the son, Robert Mueller is going to be indicted for his involvement in the 9/11 cover-up as well as for his participation in the ongoing fake Russian witch hunt in the US, the sources say. It is interesting to note in this context that the top political leaders attending this year's fascist-run World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland are Shinzo Abe and German Chancellor, and Hitler's daughter, Angela Merkel, respective heads of the fascist allies of World War II. Meanwhile, the heads of countries that fought against the fascists, British Prime Minister Theresa May, French President Emmanuel Macron, U.S. President Donald Trump, Chinese President Xi Jinping, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, are all boycotting Davos. A slew of business leaders are also cancelling their appearances there, as they did for last October's Saudi Davos in the desert. This is no coincidence, Pentagon sources say. Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, sources say, the U.S. military, along with the Chinese and Russians, took over all of the global accounts including the Vatican and Federal Reserve accounts, to effectively start triggering the global currency reset. The first of this will involve paying off Tier 1 account holders, the sources say. Tier 1 are the account owners and certain key sovereigns who practically will be paid off to move out of the way and stop interfering or delaying the global reset process. Basically, this is karma coming full circle. It means that the offer made to the Vatican, Fed, Jesuits, etc. is to either take gold or lead bribe or death, one source says. The rest of the financial reset is still being debated, but there is a broad agreement to set up a Western Future Planning Agency to work in harmony with the Chinese One Belt One Road, OBOR, project, European royal family sources say. It will have an initial budget of around $300 billion, they say. Also, China has agreed to buy $1 trillion worth of U.S. exports in order to stop the drain of jobs and money from the UME, various sources agree. One visible sign of this reset is the fact that a bill has been introduced in the U.S. Congress to remove the U.S. from the United Nations and boot the UN out of the U.S. Remember, the UN is a privately owned corporation and not genuinely representative of the people of the world. The healthy parts of the UN will be taken over by a replacement for the UN that will be headquartered in Asia, possibly Laos, according to Asian secret society sources. A cleanup of the UN has also begun with an investigation of corruption at the WHO, World Harm Organization, involving the misuse of Ebola funds to do things like pay for a girlfriend's travel expenses. The WHO is also being accused of rampant racism and sexism. As these investigations proceed, the world will learn about their role in faking or actually causing pandemics to promote vaccine campaigns and pharmaceutical sales in exchange for payoffs. The summit between Trump and North Korean strongman Kim Jong-un is planned for late February after the Asian Lunar New Year holidays, and will probably deal with the financial reset and issues like the fascist regime in Japan and Korean reunification, Pentagon and Asian secret society sources say. The cleanup of the satanic cabal in the West should be near completion by the time the summit takes place, the sources say. In the U.S., in particular, the shutdown of the government is paving the way for a major purge. After the shutdown passes 30 days, Trump can fire federal employees in oppressive agencies like the TSA, IRS, corrupt ones like the FBI, DOJ, CIA, State Department, and Deep State Operatives or Senior Executive Service, SES, mandarins installed by former U.S. President Barack Obama, Pentagon sources note. Also, with federal courts running out of funds on January 18, military tribunals can begin in earnest, the sources note. Furthermore, the purge of the U.S. government continues with Congressman Tom Marino quitting just after re-election because of his involvement in the opioid crisis now raging in the U.S., the sources note. Plus, the reformed FBI has started probing foreign corruption in Congress, they say. This has already started to bear fruit in the form of the cancellation of various congressional delegations, CODELs, starting with the trip of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff to Brussels, Egypt, and Afghanistan, the sources say. Apparently the CODEL was to take orders and bribes from globalists in Brussels, stir up the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and backdoor into Israel via the Sinai, and prolong drug trafficking in Afghanistan, the sources say. The trip to Israel was meant to provide bribes to the CODEL so they could fight to protect U.S. transfer payments to Israel and protect Satan-worshipping Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Fortunately, the bribes could not be paid and now the Israelis are finally moving to indict their Prime Minister. According to Israeli press reports, Israel's Attorney General Avigdor Mendelblit will recommend indicting Netanyahu next month. Meanwhile, the losers gathering in Davos this week can contemplate their failures both in the service of humanity